Alright guys, so we are back with another video on the Gen 5 maddog. In the last video I kind of just touched base on me getting it and introducing it to the channel. With this episode I think I'm going to actually go ahead and start adding the parts to it. I'm still waiting on the belt and the fuel lines, but I'm thinking of mocking up everything on the setup that it currently is at, so I can trial run it and see what I'm sitting at. Currently the top speed I had hit with the way it's sitting right now. I was able to hit between 59 62 GPS verified. Obviously the wind is going to be against me today, but I want to see what improving the fuel pump would do for this whole setup. And I figured if I'm doing the fuel pump, I might as well get up underneath here since I have the new ignition coil and go ahead and swap the ignition coil a while along with the spark plug itself. That way when I run this, it's all going to be new. So it'll be new ignition coil from NCY. It's going to be the new Mikuni DF44 fuel pump. And I think I'm just going to literally mock it up just like this, because I don't want to put this pan back on, take it back off for the fuel lines, put it back on, take it back off for something else. So right now, until I do everything lined up, I think I'm going to add all this stuff and probably just put the Mikuni up here. And then once I get the new lines in, probably put the Mikuni down here on this little panel, probably like right here, right in line with the tank. I'll probably shoot it out of the tank, run it through a filter, into the pump, and then up through to the carb. So like I said, here's the new ignition coil from NCY, your standard. You just basically plug it in like factory. Then we have the Mikuni DF44 fuel pump, along with the new NGK CR7HIX plug. And like I said, here is that pan I was talking about. This one is the one that basically goes right underneath the seat. The fuel pump attaches to it and all that stuff, at least the factory fuel pump. On my last setup, I actually had the Mikuni DF44. I just drilled a second hole so it could line up, and then I just basically put it right in this area. I think on this setup that I'm doing now with this Gen 5, I'm going to put the Mikuni down by the tank, because it's more of a push style pump, less of a pull style. So if I put it right in line with the basically even with the fuel tank, it should work pretty good. I mean, it worked fine with it mounted on this location, but it just should be a little bit better with the cowl setup. Okay, so obviously the first setup I'm gonna have to deal with is all of my awesome zip ties. So I have this thing zip tied together right now, basically just holding everything together. So I'm just gonna start cutting that zip tie off. This zip tie, this one, that one. What else we got? Got the ignition coil one. Make sure when you're cutting zip ties, you don't cut a wire, obviously. That'll be free, that'll be free. Cut this one, and then I'm going to be cutting the one that holds it all together. And there you go. Also, if you're wondering about the tail light, yes, like I said, there's zip ties on it right now. When I tighten these nuts to this plate, I ended up snapping the studs out of the brake light itself. That was a my bad. So I have these temporarily holding it on. I do have another one of these coming, so it's actually just bolted on and not bolted on / held on by zip ties. That's why I just left these things hang off of them, because it's literally coming off tomorrow, because tomorrow the next one's coming in, so I'll just have to wire it in the same way this one's wired in. And I'll also shorten up the wiring, because the wiring, I have a lot of excess, and I was going to fine tune it, but I wanted to make sure everything was running first before I start going through and cutting out the fine details on everything. Alright, so right now I'm just basically going through everything I just cut off. I'm trying to pull all the old zip ties off and get them together so I don't make too much of a mess. I'm going to have to cut this one off quick. Let me get right to that. Alright, so now with the ignition coil, you have the two portions of the ignition coil. This is where it mounts to the seat rest. I'm going to take that off later then, but like for right now, I'm just going to keep everything zip tied together. So with this, it's pretty simple to disconnect. Obviously, you pull off the spark plug boot off the motor itself, and then you get the coil. You pull back this sheath. Once you have the sheath pulled back, it'll expose the two wires. Obviously, keep note of where green is. Green on these Chinese scooters is usually ground. It's annoying, I know, and some of them are different. Just keep in mind that a lot of times green on these Chinese scooters is going to be ground. I'm going to go ahead, pop these two off. Alright, now that we got the terminals disconnected, go ahead and pull the coil up. You can actually save this coil, your old coil, if it worked, just as a backup. If you did not know, even if these wires fail, you can literally unscrew them. There's basically just like a wood screw inside this coil, and you can literally just screw the wire in and it'll attach. Same thing with the boot. These actually unscrew off. I actually had on my last setup, I actually took the boot off and literally screwed the wire straight onto the threads of the spark plug. Just a little fun fact. Now let's get to opening this NCY ignition coil and then popping it on quick. Alright, now that we got the NCY coil out of the box, you'll know it says NCY on the boot, which is a yellow boot, and then you got the red coil. I'm going to go ahead and hook it up. Remember, like on the last setup, we had green as ground, so we will hook up green to black, and we will hook up yellow and black to green. Alright, now that we got the NCY hooked back up, like I said, green to black, yellow and black to green, just like the other setup, I'm going to go ahead and take this sheath, cover these wires back up, and slide it on over. It basically acts like an insulator against the water. And then we will put that right there for now, and I will pop the spark plug off, which is going to be a 5/8 spark plug socket. And I'm going to be accessing this spark plug through the side here. As you can see, it's right in there. I'll slide in there with the 5/8, and I'm going to break it free and pull it out. Keep in mind, when you pull the spark plug out, always look at the tip, and around it, you can kind of tell how the fuel is burning in there. Obviously, if it's like all white, it's getting too much air, you need to add more fuel, obviously jet up. If it's all black, you need to add more air, less fuel. So right now this one's looking pretty decent in all honesty, but like I said, it's kind of misleading because this spark plug has been in it the whole time. It'll be easier to gauge out what's happening with the new plug. So I'm going to swap this out, which is actually ironically enough, the NGK CR7HIX plug. Obviously don't do that. And I'm going to pop that in there and we'll see what's going on next. And also, so you guys can tell, the HIX plug is the iridium plug. The HSA plug, which I put back in that box, is your standard style plug. So this is going to be the iridium plug, which is the HIX. HSA is standard, HIX is iridium. Alright, I'm going to pop it in, get to the next one. Alright, so we got the new spark plug in there. Got the ignition coil on there. I'm going to go ahead and take this boot a while and go ahead and attach it to spark plug. And you'll know when it's in there because it'll snap. You'll hear it click on. And now let's tackle this. Alright, so for the stock fuel pump, this is what the Mad Dogs come with from the factory, this style fuel pump. You're going to have, with it sitting up like this, the two lines coming out the bottom. The top is going to be feed from the tank. This top bottom hose is going to be vacuum. Or I'm sorry, this is going to be fuel, and then this is going to be vacuum. This bottom hose. This bottom hose is vacuum, fuel to carb, fuel to from tank. So I'm going to disconnect all these and set it up with the new Mikuni. And before we get this started, as you can tell, the Mikuni DF44 1 will say Mikuni on it. So if you get a pump that says it's a Mikuni and it doesn't have that writing on it, it's a fake. But the Mikuni is pretty straightforward, as you can tell. It tells you where fuel feed is coming in from the tank with the arrow going in. It tells you where the fuel is leaving with the arrow going out. And then obviously this top hose is vacuum. So obviously if you know what that is and you know what this is, you literally just take those hoses and hook them to this the same way it's hooked up to this for the most part. Just follow the directions. Arrow in, arrow out, middle is vacuum. And just like that. That's why I parked it in this dead grass, by the way, because it will try to drip some gas. Not much, but it will drip a little bit of gas. So I wouldn't, this part of the yard's already dead from a little kiddie pool that was here. Pulled the old pump off, sitting there. Got the new one all hooked in, like I said. Vacuum to the top. Tank goes in. And then out goes to the carb. So it is ideal to have a filter before the fuel pump. But like I said, I'm just using the stock lines that I already have. When I do mount it down here, I will probably put it out of the tank into a filter, hose, back into the Mikuni, and then up this way. That way it's already filtered down here, and it'll clean it up here as well. Especially once I start getting rid of all these extra lines with the new carb setup. I'll just have to cap this off then. But I'm going to go ahead and zip tie all these lines and hoses up out of the way, so when I drive it, obviously stuff doesn't fly everywhere, and we'll get back into it. And just like that, it's all put together. I have this thing kind of basically just zip tied together for now, like I said, until I get that panel on, and then the new fuel line, so I can put this down here, and obviously I'll put the red fuel filter that I bought. I'm not going to keep that one, even though this is new, that came with the carb. I'm going to end up swapping this out with the other one and put it right down here. So I'll have the whole fuel setup down here. Fuel pump, it'll come out of the tank into the filter, go a little bit, probably like a little inch section of hose, and it'll go into the car or the fuel pump, and then it'll shoot out and come up here for the carb. But for right now, for testing purposes, this will be fine, especially along with the new ignition coil and spark plug, just to see the high speed test to see if it does still bog out or not. It shouldn't with this fuel pump, because this fuel pump is pretty solid. And this is pretty much in like around the same location I had my Gen 4's Mikuni pump. I actually had it over like right up here upside down, so upside down shouldn't matter either. But like I said, it would be probably a little bit better, since this is a push style pump versus the pull, to have it down there a little bit lower than the tank. But like I said, on my Gen 4 I did it the same way, except I mounted it to the metal plate right here, like right in this location, and it did fine for like, I had that thing for 3,000–4,000 miles after that, and it was fine the whole time. So yeah, but there you go. Once you get all that done, obviously clean up your zip tie mess if you're going to do the zip tie route. Go ahead, close it up, and then you will have to, it's not going to start right away because it has to re-prime the pump, but once it's all primed up, go ahead, give it a shot, and you should be good. You shouldn't have to worry about wide open throttle bog outs anymore with that fuel pump. I'm going to clean all this stuff up, get ready, and I'm going to go take it for a drive, and in my next video I will say the results on how the coil and pump reacted to everything. Alright, and like I said, if you are a Mad Dog guy and you want to follow me for some more info on these, go ahead and hit that follow button, subscribe to the channel, share the content if you do want to make it better. There is still some other things I have to do, like the exhaust wrap right there that's dangling. I'll get to that. I plan on actually probably pulling that off. But yeah, like I said, this information goes to all the GY6 motors, specifically this 150, which is a 157 QMJ motor. If you guys don't know how to find your motor code, you go to the CVT case, you go down a little bit, and it's going to be right here. And like I said, it's going to say what the code is on the motor, so you guys know what you're looking at. But that's going to do it for this video. And yeah, if you like the video, like the content, go ahead and subscribe to the channel for more feed on this. And like I said, if you have a question, drop it in the comments, guys. Alright, peace until the next video.